Those two, first song on self-titled. The only thing I can say is that the very initial conversations that we had as a band about this record all circled around the idea of energy, tempo, how these songs would translate live. Um, that was a lot of the conversation during the writing, during the recording. And I think this song specifically, we kept circling back to it being first. I think we had an idea that this was going to be the first song before even the rest of the music was recorded. We just felt like this was a great way to introduce that concept of energy and tempo. And hopefully, we've only had a chance to play it once so far live, but hopefully it's a song that people, you know, vibrate with live. I think it's going to be a really fun tune to see evolve as the record becomes more familiar with folks. Conceptually, this song, I mean, just like a lot of the record, revolves around the idea of having our first baby. And it's sort of, I feel like the concept can be applied to so many different aspects of experience. Sort of those moments that you can't explain, you can't put into words, and you don't need to, because you can feel it. It's so visceral, it's so tangible, yet it's nearly impossible to articulate with language. And this song is sort of about that 16-minute experience that my wife went through having our baby, and but again, I can apply it to so many other experiences in my life, and I feel like this is, on other albums of ours, I feel like there might be rivals for or better opening songs, but this is definitely up there for me, and I'm excited to see, like I said, how it evolves once people familiarize with the record and have time to let it all sink in.
How to Exit a Room. This song had been around for a little bit. John sent us a batch of demos probably in early 2022. And the demo sounded a whole lot different. It was more of an acoustic-based song, but the drums were really driving like they are in the song. And it wasn't until we got up to Jared's parents' cabin for pre-production that we showed Colby this song. It wasn't in the original group of songs that we showed him. And we were kind of still searching for some more tunes to put on the record. And he was just like, hey, I have this song. It's called How to Exit a Room. And he showed it to Colby, and instantly Colby was in. He loved the title of it. We all thought it was really interesting take on a song title, and just you can visualize like what that feels like being somewhere that maybe you're not comfortable or you're feeling uneasy and you're just trying to get out. And so we showed the demo to Colby, and we started working on it. It was still all the way through pre-pro. It was still this acoustic kind of driving kind of tune, but we loved it. It just felt really great. The melody of the chorus became pretty quick, and then Pat did drums to it, to that acoustic vibe, and then we were actually making the record, and it was time to put guitars on it, and we couldn't get the acoustics to sound all that good. So we worked on a whole day sounding like that, and it just wasn't really feeling great. And then we came in the next day, and the beginning of the song starts with John going, I have an idea, it sounds like this, boom, 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 boom. And Colby happened to be recording his phone at that time and caught that moment, and the whole song just like flipped just completely on its head and kind of like went from this acoustic kind of song to one of the more rockin' tunes on it. It still is in that like driving feeling, but yeah, we just went full guitar, electric guitar on it, and it is the song that you now know. Blame. This was the first song written for the record. We actually recorded a totally different version of it with the same chorus at the same time that we were working on Loved You a Little, so a little bit after XO. And yeah, we completely finished it. So there is a different version of Blame on our computer somewhere. I'm sure we'll show it to you at some time. But we kind of shelved it for a while and didn't think much about it. And then Pat had an idea, because we all liked the chorus a lot, but the verses on the other version were just kind of like, we weren't in love with. And Pat had the idea of just being like, what if it felt like the verses was a completely different song, and then it just like pulls you out, and then this chorus, big kind of like big Maine feeling chorus happens. So yeah, Pat's idea was to have the chaos in the verses, and then have that big kind of pop chorus that we have on there. But we had both verses and both choruses for a long time, and then it wasn't until pre-pro that we kind of found the rest of the feeling of the song, and the post-chorus and the bridge came together then. And then again in when we were actually recording the record, Jared thought that maybe the chorus needed to groove more, so he came up with like the bass riff. So thank you, Jared, for ripping that. And yeah, I think that it was a big undertaking in that song. It was probably one of the hardest things to get right, but we all loved it so much. And it was the first song that during pre-production that Colby turned around and went, that's on the record. So we all, and I was super scared because I loved that song so much and I thought it was really special. And for him to like it as much as we did, it was super exciting. And yeah, it turned out to be one of my favorite songs on the record, and I hope you like it too.
So Leavin' 5 was kind of the culmination of us feeling like this record had a dancier, sort of more fun, loose feel to it. And I feel like you can hear it a lot on the record, but there's a lot of like subtle pop disco influence happening, and a lot of that lends itself to the bass lines. We tried a little bit harder on this record to consciously think about how the drums and the bass were interacting. And on Leavin' 5, it was this crazy moment because we were trying to fill in the blanks and listen to, we kind of had this like straight beat happening, and the vibe was there, but I think the bass was kind of just like stabbing and just going. I think we were listening to, Colby's always got like his top 50. His like Spotify, like he loves pop, like that's his jam. And we were listening to Dua Lipa. I don't know who put it on, probably John. And there was this really intricate bass line. It's like in her biggest song, and it's super, super well played. We're like looking around. It's like none of us can play like that. So we're gonna try to incorporate what that was, but try to do it in a way that, was to our ability kind of. So funny enough, I have a little Kemper amp, and in the amp there's a stock patch that's like a bass transformer, so it makes your guitar sound like a bass. It just drops it down by an octave. And we just started messing around on the guitar, trying to play how you would play, low notes on a guitar, but treating it as if it's a bass. So you're hearing it as technically a bass. And we just kind of went to town. We spent like an hour and a half just like, oh, no, move that note. Don't do that here. So it was like a collective sort of figuring out of what this bass part was going to be. And then as soon as that locked in, we were kind of like, okay, so this is like disco kind of, but at the same time, there were all these other little bits and pieces to it. We knew we wanted to have this really crazy clean guitar in the chorus, which is again like sort of a disco element, and then the bridge, there's like a contrast. So it was like this whole song was very clean and very polished, and there was a solo that I wanted to have come in, and I wanted it to be a pretty stark contrast to the cleanliness of like the sound of this song. So we found this really gnarly, like dirty patch, and if you listen in the demo, it's like super washed out and you can't really even hear what I'm playing. It's because I didn't know what I was going to play. So I just like cranked the reverb and was just like digging in and like playing all over the map and just trying to like hit some cool notes and have a vibe. Wasn't really working on the part, wasn't concerned about what notes we were hitting. And then going back and listening, I can pick out pieces of it, and I know what I did when we got back in to record the record is like listen to that and like hear what I was trying to do, and then we found an even better tone, something that was like really gnarly and dirty, and I just tried to play the same thing. And I got one take done, and I remember looking around and being like, that was terrible. And Colby was like, listen back to it. I think what you did was on accident kind of cool. And so we listened back, and it was kind of like, oh shit, there's something in there that like in the solo, the way that it's breaking up, the way that the sort of the gain is like overloading itself, there's this really cool break, and it's really rhythmic. So that was like one of those little happy accidents that kind of only happens if somebody speaks up and is like, hey, I know that maybe you didn't feel confident about that, but we hear something cool in that. And that's a testament to everybody being in the room and listening and paying attention and you know, saying so if they hear something cool or if they hear something they don't like, which is a lot harder to do. Initially, the working title was called, I think it was called Hodge or Hodgepodge, and it was, John had different vocal melodies, and we were having a hard time decide which one we liked for which song. And then I think at the end of the day, we ended up taking these different vocal parts, these different melody ideas that he had. And we're like, well, these are all good. Maybe they can all fit in the same song. So we kind of squished them all in there and like figured out what was what. And then that's kind of how the song ended up being, you know, the working title was Hodgepodge, but Leaving 5.
All right, The Mood I'm In. This is a song that John had for a while. We all loved it and thought it was really cool, but we really just had the intro guitar riff and like the breath thing that happens, and we weren't sure where to take it, how to get into a chorus. We tried a bunch of different options and we're just getting caught. So one day we were working with Andrew Goldstein, who we've written a couple songs with before. But this was the first time we've worked with him as a whole band. Usually it's just been him and John. And we came up with the big part that just does like the hits. And then when it dropped down to the chorus, all of a sudden John just pulls out his phone and starts singing the entire chorus in full. He had it written out. He said he wrote it at like 2:00 in the morning in bed on his phone, and had all the words and the vocal, like everything exactly how it is on the album, which isn't something that he does often at all. Usually he waits to write any of the lyrics until like the very, very end. So once we heard it, we're like, this song is done. That is epic. And yeah, it's very like conversational, and just in a different way than he generally writes. So it's one of my favorite songs. I Think About You All the Time. This song really started the vibe of the album for sure. John had written it just as an acoustic song, with a totally different vibe. It was really just like one kind of thing the whole time, but we thought the vocal was really, really rad. And he came up with that intro guitar riff, and that tone for like the fuzzed out guitar. And that really ended up being kind of a signature sound that helped us like shape all the songs on the record. So once we had that, we were like, oh wow, this is going to be on the album 100%. Now we kind of have like a jumping off point, and we knew like where we wanted to go next. So yeah, it was really like pivotal track in the album. In like the pre-production process and the recording process, really not much changed. Like the song is really about that guitar riff and the vocals. So not much like overthinking happened. Just like, this is a good vibe. Let's just go with it. Don't try to like reinvent the wheel. So yeah, really pumped on that. And really, you know, sometimes when you have a demo that you really like, it's really hard to match it. So I'm really proud that we were able to record an actual version of the song that we like. So yeah, I think this is going to be a fun one to play live. So very curious to see what people think about it.
So, Thoughts I Have While Lying in Bed is probably, I think it's the only song on the record that happened completely organically in our sort of final writing session when Colby came to Arizona. So we were up at my family's cabin, and we'd gone through like a lot of the demos, and we got to this place where John was kind of working with like this like piano loop and started chopping it up. And he's normally pretty quick. Like he's got this like little method that he does where he'll take a sample and he'll just kind of like chop it in different places and rearrange it. And then a lot of times it ends up being something really cool. And I remember we were hearing it, we were kind of thinking about how it was going to fit into like a vibe that we were working on. I think it started slow and then we sped it up. And then there was this like low bass tone, and we started to come up with this progression, and I think it ended up happening on like an old Juno like keyboard. So it's like I love the way that it starts because it's got this, you know, it's playing the full round of the song, but you don't have a backbeat, so you can't really tell where exactly the one is. And I'm like on the fence usually whether or not that's a good idea. I think it's nice as a listener to have something to grab onto like immediately, but I think something about the way that song starts, you've got like this big hit, and then right after that this like clean guitar like chimey like ring, and without the vocal you're a little bit lost. And I feel like that is something that you can kind of play to. It's sort of an advantage because like when the vocal comes in, it's that much more like grounding. So that's how that one started. And to be totally honest, I was just going back and listening to demos, and it didn't change a whole lot. Like that song, so it was initially called One Fast Sting. I don't know why we named anything. Eventually became Thoughts I Have While Lying in Bed. But it was just sort of a mixture of us sitting there and trying to find something that we liked and something that fit the vibe of the record and the demos that we had so far. And then ultimately we kind of got stuck on this loop and just kind of working on that and molding it into something. And eventually it became what it is now. Getting back down to Phoenix to record it, I feel like there wasn't much that we had to do. We just kind of had to go in and kind of paint by numbers and make everything sound really good. A lot of the parts were already there. But yeah, it's one of those songs where we just kind of lucked out, and there's only been a few over the years where it sort of writes itself. And that was one that certainly once the ball got rolling, I think we finished it in like 3 hours. So, yeah, it didn't need a lot of tweaking. We got right into the studio, and I remember being like, I know what this needs. And we all kind of went to work, and same thing. Once we were sitting in front of the board back in Phoenix, it just kind of came together. That's probably a testament to it being a good song. It was my favorite song as soon as we finished the demo. So I remember going home and being like, this is the one that I'm going to listen to on repeat to kind of get myself into a mindset for the record. So still my favorite one.
Over the span of 9 albums now, I've certainly written plenty of personal songs, songs that have very concise and direct meanings. I think they're very obvious to the listener, and if not, they're obviously extremely at least concise in my brain. This record, I've I will probably say it over the span of the next cycle, but a lot of this record is written about the experience of having a child, and well, obviously I didn't have the child, but having a child come into the world. This song, Funny How, is one that I initially wrote melodically, and the foundation of the lyric, I really only had Ain't It Funny How, and then it was just sort of like rambling gibberish after that. But I had written it with the intention of potentially having a female vocalist sing it. And I obviously I would love Adele to sing a song that I wrote, but that was the voice that I had in mind when I wrote it. And so the initial idea had a lot of head voice and falsetto, and even over the span of 9 albums, even trying to find a head voice and a falsetto, I just don't possess that, and I've come to terms with it completely. I'm not that type of singer. I don't possess that ability. So I faked it in this room right here via computers. And I brought the demo to everybody, and there was a different iteration, a faster iteration of this song. And I knew I loved the piano centric version. It just didn't feel like it was belonging on the record at the time, what we were kind of putting together. And I'm so fortunate that the rest of the guys fought for it and maybe saw through some of the pride that I was choking on, some of the ego that I was battling with. I can't do it. And fortunately, we created the tune in a fashion where I feel very comfortable singing it, and as far as in my melodic range and not having to do the falsetto. But lyrically, conceptually, this might be the only song that I've written in 9 albums over 16 years that I still, even right now, I get emotional when I hear it. I think because I integrated some of my daughter's voice in it, and there's something that happened to me after she came into my life that I'm much more emotional outwardly than I ever have been. But this song, I think it might be my favorite song, or maybe the song that I'm most proud of ever writing, because it means such a great deal to me, obviously, but I think that there's a sentiment in it that the idea that time is so fleeting and it comes and goes so quickly, and you have these built-up stories in your brain about how your life is going to pan out and how things might play out, and maybe some of it comes true, but so much of life can't be planned and can't be thought ahead about, and this is my articulation of that, my interpretation of the idea that it's a wildly amazing ride that we all get to experience by being alive and by being able to walk through this world. So yeah, I think I'm gonna try to cook up some sort of maybe even more stripped down version of this song, and show people kind of what the original demo sounded more like on the piano and vocal only. My favorite song on the album. I hope you enjoy it.
Cars and Caution Signs is one of my favorite tracks on the record, And when I think about full albums, I like songs that are maybe deep in the album that take you on a journey. And this song for me is that feeling. It fades in from the song before it, it transitions into the song after it, and once you've reached the end of this song, you can't really remember where you started from. And that was something really unique about this song on the record. We have been trying to do something like this for a really long time. There have been a lot of songs that we as a band really love, and those songs have never really made their influence quite like this on a record. And this song is very linear. It has the same beat throughout the whole thing, and the cool parts of the song to me are the way that things come in and they come out and then they crescendo as the song is going, and it really feels like this upward build the whole time. And that to me is what made it really special. And I know that when we were doing this, we kind of told Colby, who produced the record and is amazing, works really well with us. He usually does a good job of trying to rope us in. When we're going a little too wild, he tries to bring it back to planet Earth. And we do such a great job together, but this one was like, hey, lay back, we're not gonna focus on the same song structure as a normal song. Not looking for the same things. It's supposed to make you feel differently than the other songs on the record, and that's what makes up a cool record to me. And it's definitely one of my favorite songs that ended up making it on there. The song Spiraling was really one that I wanted on the record from the first time I heard the demo of it. John had this little version of the verse and chorus lyrically, and I was always just really mesmerized by the idea of it. The lyric itself kind of really felt unique to me, and when we started working on this song, it was one that I really pushed for. And when it made the initial cut for the record, we started talking about structure of the record, and for us, the last song on the record really holds a focal point. We like to spend our time on that, and we know, and people who listen to the record know that that's going to be a song that we've put some thought into. And for me, I think for the rest of the guys, this song is kind of feels like, if the rest of the record is the party, this is the after party. This is the dancing until the sun's coming up. This is things are dying down, but you can't stop having fun. And it really it feels that way to me, because the song before it, which I talk about on Cars and Caution Signs, because of that song, the way that one feels, it kind of feels like a last song, and this one feels like this afterthought, but not, it definitely wasn't an afterthought for us. It's one of my favorite songs. It really does some really special things. The bass line was something we really tried to rein in and make feel really right for this part. It took us a minute to dial that one. And lyrically, John does this thing that I really like in certain songs that's a text painting kind of vibe, where he talks about open the blinds, it's summertime, and the music kind of follows that, and it feels less foggy, and it feels like it brightens up, and it feels like you're opening the window shades. And so that part always rang really strong for me, and I'm really excited that it made it on the record.